On a cold, frosty day, an ant was dragging out some of the corn which he had laid up in the summer-time to dry it. A grasshopper, half perished with hunger, besought the ant to give him a morsel of it to preserve his life. "What were you doing," said the ant, "this last summer?" "Oh," said the grasshopper, "I was not idle. I kept singing all the summer long." Said the ant, laughing and shutting up his granary, "Since you could sing all summer, you may dance all winter. Winter finds out what summer lays by." A fox who had never seen a lion, when by some chance he met him for the first time, was so terrified that he almost died of fright. When he met him the second time, he was still afraid, but managed to disguise his fear. When he saw him the third time, he was so much emboldened that he went up to him and asked him how he did. Familiarity breeds contempt. An oak that had been rooted up by the winds was borne down the stream of a river, on the banks of which many reeds were growing. The oak wondered to see that things so slight and frail had stood the storm, when so great and strong a tree as himself had been rooted up. "Cease to wonder," said the reed. "You were overthrown by fighting against the storm, whilst we are safe by yielding and bending to the slightest breath that blows." A wolf had got a bone stuck in his throat, and in the greatest agony ran up and down, beseeching every animal he met to relieve him, at the same time hinting at a very handsome reward to the successful operator. A crane, moved by his entreaties and promises, ventured her long neck down the wolf's throat and drew out the bone. She then modestly asked for the promised reward, to which the wolf, grinning and showing his teeth, replied with seeming indignation, "Ungrateful creature, to ask for any other reward than that you've put your head into a wolf's jaws and brought it out safe again. Those who are charitable only in the hope of a return must not be surprised if, in their dealings with evil men, they meet with more jeers than thanks." A jackdaw, as vain and conceited as jackdaw could be, picked up the feathers which some peacocks had shed, stuck them among his own, and, despising his old companions, introduced himself with the greatest assurance into a flock of these beautiful birds. They, instantly detecting the intruder, stripped him of his borrowed plumes, and, falling upon him with their beaks, sent him about his business. The unlucky jackdaw, sorely punished and deeply sorrowing, betook himself to his former companions, and would have flocked with them again as if nothing had happened. But they, recollecting what airs he had given himself, drummed him out of their society, while one of those whom he had so lately despised read him this lecture: "Had you been contented with what nature made you, you would have escaped the chastisement of your betters, and also the contempt of your equals." In days of yore, a mighty rumbling was heard in a mountain. It was said to be in labour, and multitudes flocked together from far and near to see what it would produce. After long expectation and many wise conjectures from the bystanders, out popped a mouse. The story applies to those whose magnificent promises end in a paltry performance. A hound, who had been an excellent one in his time, and had done good service to his master in the field, at length became worn out with the weight of years and trouble. One day, while hunting the wild bear, he seized the creature by the ear, but his teeth giving way, he was forced to let go his hold, and the bear escaped. Upon this the huntsman, coming up, severely rated him. But the feeble dog replied, "Spare your old servant. It was the power, not the will, that failed me. Remember rather what I was, than abuse me for what I am." As a cock was scratching up the straw in the farmyard in search of food for the hens, he hit upon a jewel that by some chance had found its way there. "Oh," said he, "you're a very fine thing, no doubt, to those who prize you, but give me a barleycorn before all the pearls in the world." The cock was a sensible cock, but there are many silly people who despise what is precious only because they cannot understand it. A man and a satyr, having struck up an acquaintance, sat down together to eat. The day being wintry and cold, the man put his fingers to his mouth and blew upon them. "What's that for, my friend?" asked the satyr. "My hands are so cold," said the man, "I do it to warm them." In a little while some hot food was placed before them, and the man, raising the dish to his mouth, again blew upon it. "And what's the meaning of that now?" said the satyr. "Oh," replied the man, "my porridge is so hot, I do it to cool it." "Nay, then," said the satyr, "from this moment I renounce your friendship, for I will have nothing to do with one who blows hot and cold with the same mouth." A pot of honey having been upset in a grocer's shop, the flies came around it in swarms to eat it up, nor would they move from the spot while there was a drop left. At length their feet became so clogged that they could not fly away, and stifling in the luscious sweets, they exclaimed, "Miserable creatures that we are, who for the sake of an hour's pleasure have thrown away our lives." A woodman was felling a tree on the bank of a river, and by chance let slip his axe into the water, when it immediately sunk to the bottom. Being thereupon in great distress, he sat down by the side of the stream and lamented his loss bitterly. But Mercury, whose river it was, taking compassion on him, appeared at the instant before him, and hearing from him the cause of his sorrow, dived to the bottom of the river, and bringing up a golden axe, asked the woodman if that were his. Upon the man's denying it, Mercury dived a second time, and brought up one of silver. Again the man denied that it was his. So diving a third time, he produced the identical axe which the man had lost. "That is mine," said the woodman, delighted to have recovered his own. And so pleased was Mercury with the fellow's truth and honesty, that he at once made him a present of the other two. The man goes to his companions, and giving them an account of what had happened to him, one of them determined to try whether he might not have the like good fortune. So repairing to the same place, as if for the purpose of cutting wood, he let slip his axe on purpose into the river, and then sat down on the bank and made a great show of weeping. Mercury appeared as before, and hearing from him that his tears were caused by the loss of his axe, dived once more into the stream, and bringing up a golden axe, asked him if that was the axe he had lost. "Aye, surely," said the man eagerly, and he was about to grasp the treasure when Mercury, to punish his impudence and lying, not only refused to give him that, but would not so much as restore him his old axe again. Honesty is the best policy. A tortoise, dissatisfied with his lowly life, when he beheld so many of the birds, his neighbours, disporting themselves in the clouds, and thinking that if he could but once get up into the air, he could soar with the best of them, called one day upon an eagle, and offered him all the treasures of ocean if he could only teach him to fly. The eagle would have declined the task, assuring him that the thing was not only absurd but impossible. But being further pressed by the entreaties and promises of the tortoise, he at length consented to do for him the best he could. So, taking him up to a great height in the air and loosing his hold upon him, "Now then," cried the eagle. But the tortoise, before he could answer him with a word, fell plump upon a rock and was dashed to pieces. Pride shall have a fall. A shepherd boy, who tended his flock not far from a village, used to amuse himself at times in crying out, "Wolf! Wolf!" Twice or thrice his trick succeeded. The whole village came running out to his assistance, when all the return they got was to be laughed at for their pains. At last, one day, the wolf came indeed. The boy cried out in earnest, but his neighbours, supposing him to be at his old sport, paid no heed to his cries, and the wolf devoured the sheep. So the boy learned, when it was too late, that liars are not believed even when they tell the truth. An ass, hearing some grasshoppers chirping, was delighted with the music, and determining, if he could, to rival them, asked them what it was they fed upon to make them sing so sweetly. When they told him that they supped on nothing but dew, the ass betook himself to the same diet, and soon died of hunger. One man's meat is another man's poison. A fox had fallen into a well, and had been casting about for a long time how he should get out again, when at length a goat came to the place, and wanting to drink, asked Reynard whether the water was good, and if there was plenty of it. The fox, dissembling the real danger of his case, replied, "Come down, my friend. The water is so good that I cannot drink enough of it, and so abundant that it cannot be exhausted." Upon this the goat, without any more ado, leaped in, when the fox, taking advantage of his friend's horns, as nimbly leaped out, and coolly remarked to the poor deluded goat, "If you had half as much brains as you have beard, you would have looked before you leaped." A hare jeered at a tortoise for the slowness of his pace, but he laughed and said that he would run against her and beat her any day she would name. "Come on," said the hare, "you shall soon see what my feet are made of." So it was agreed that they should start at once. The tortoise went off, jogging along without a moment's stopping at his usual steady pace. The hare, treating the whole matter very lightly, said she would first take a little nap, and that she would soon overtake the tortoise. Meanwhile the tortoise plodded on, and the hare, oversleeping herself, arrived at the goal only to see that the tortoise had got in before her. Slow and steady wins the race. An ox, grazing in a swampy meadow, chanced to set his foot among a parcel of young frogs, and crushed nearly the whole brood to death. One that escaped ran off to his mother with the dreadful news. "And oh, mother," said he, "it was a beast, such a big 4-footed beast that did it." "Big?" quoth the old frog. "How big?" "Was it as big," and she puffed herself out to a great degree, "as big as this?" "Oh," said the little one, "a great deal bigger than that." "Well, was it so big?" And she swelled herself out yet more. "Indeed, mother, but it was. But if you were to burst yourself, you could never reach half its size." Provoked at such a disparagement of her powers, the old frog made one more trial, and burst herself indeed. So men are ruined by attempting a greatness to which they have no claim. A fox, just at the time of the vintage, stole into a vineyard where the ripe grapes were trellised up on high in the most tempting show. He made many a spring and a jump for the luscious prize, but failing in all his attempts, he muttered as he retreated, "Well, what does it matter? The grapes are sour." A dog had stolen a piece of meat out of a butcher's shop, and was crossing a river on its way home, when he saw his own shadow reflected in the stream below. Thinking that it was another dog with another piece of meat, he resolved to make himself master of that also, but in snapping at the supposed treasure, he dropped the bit that he was carrying, and so lost all. Grasp at the shadow and lose the substance, the common fate of those who hazard a real blessing for some visionary good. A crow, ready to die with thirst, flew with joy to a pitcher which he saw at a distance. But when he came up to it, he found the water so low that with all his stooping and straining he was unable to reach it. Thereupon he tried to break the pitcher, then to overturn it, but his strength was not sufficient to do either. At last, seeing some small pebbles at hand, he dropped a great many of them one by one into the pitcher, and so raised the water to the brim and quenched his thirst. Skill and patience will succeed where force fails. Necessity is the mother of invention. Once upon a time, a country mouse who had a friend in town invited him, for old acquaintance' sake, to pay him a visit in the country. The invitation being accepted in due form, the country mouse, though plain and rough and somewhat frugal in his nature, opened his heart and store in honour of hospitality and an old friend. There was not a carefully stored-up morsel that he did not bring forth out of his larder. Peas and barley, cheese parings and nuts, hoping by quantity to make up what he feared was wanting in quality, to suit the palate of his dainty guest. The town mouse, condescending to pick a bit here and a bit there, while the host sat nibbling a blade of barley straw, at length exclaimed, "How is it, my good friend, that you can endure the dullness of this unpolished life? You're living like a toad in a hole. You can't really prefer these solitary rocks and woods to streets teeming with carriages and men. On my honour, you're wasting your time miserably here. We must make the most of life while it lasts. A mouse, you know, does not live forever. So come with me and I'll show you life and the town." Overpowered by such fine words in so polished a manner, the country mouse assented, and they set forth together on the journey to town. It was late in the evening when they crept stealthily into the city, and midnight ere they reached the great house where the town mouse took up his quarters. Here were couches of crimson velvet, carvings in ivory, everything in short that denoted wealth and luxury. On the table were the remains of a splendid banquet, to procure which all the choicest shops in the town had been ransacked the day before. It was now the turn of the courtier to play the host. He places his country friend on purple, runs to and fro to supply all his wants, presses dish upon dish and dainty upon dainty, as though he were waiting on a king, tastes every course ere he ventures to place it before his rustic cousin. The country mouse, for his part, affects to make himself quite at home, and blesses the good fortune that had wrought such a change in his way of life. When, in the midst of his enjoyment, as he is thinking with contempt of the poor fare he has forsaken, on a sudden the door flies open, and a party of revellers returning from a late entertainment bursts into the room. The affrighted friends jump from the table in the greatest consternation, and hide themselves in the first corner they can reach. No sooner do they venture to creep out again than the barking of dogs drives them back into still greater terror than before. At length, when things seemed quiet, the country mouse stole out from his hiding place, and bidding his friend good-bye, whispered in his ear, "Oh, my good sir, this fine mode of living may do for those who like it, but give me my barley bread in peace and security before the daintiest feast where fear and care are in waiting." Two friends were travelling on the same road together when they met with a bear. The one, in great fear, without a thought of his companion, climbed up into a tree and hid himself. The other, seeing that he had no chance single-handed against the bear, had nothing left but to throw himself on the ground and feign to be dead, for he had heard that the bear will never touch a dead body. As he thus lay, the bear came up to his head, nuzzling and snuffling at his nose and ears and heart. But the man immovably held his breath, and the beast, supposing him to be dead, walked away. When the bear was fairly out of sight, his companion came down out of the tree, and asked what it was that the bear whispered to him. "For," says he, "I observed he put his mouth very close to your ear." "Why," replies the other, "it was no great secret. He only bade me have a care how I keep company with those who, when they get into a difficulty, leave their friends in the lurch." A gnat that had been buzzing about the head of a bull, at length settling himself down upon his horn, begged his pardon for incommoding him. "But if," said he, "my weight at all inconveniences you, pray say so, and I'll be off in a moment." "Oh, never trouble your head about that," says the bull, "for it is all one to me whether you go or stay, and, to tell the truth, I did not know that you were there. The smaller the mind, the greater the conceit." The lion called the sheep to ask her if his breath smelt. She said, "Aye." He bit off her head for a fool. He called the wolf and asked him. He said no. He tore him to pieces for a flatterer. At last he called the fox and asked him. He said, truly he had got a cold and could not smell. Wise men say nothing in dangerous times. A bowman took aim at an eagle and hit him in the heart. As the eagle turned his head in the agonies of death, he saw that the arrow was winged with one of his own feathers. "How much sharper," said he, "are the wounds made by weapons which we ourselves have supplied." A dispute once arose between the wind and the sun, which was the stronger of the two, and they agreed to put the point upon this issue, that whichever soonest made a traveller take off his cloak should be accounted the more powerful. The wind began, and blew with all his might and main a blast, cold and fierce as a Thracian storm. But the stronger he blew, the closer the traveller wrapped his cloak around him, and the tighter he grasped it with his hands. Then broke out the sun. With his welcome beams he dispersed the vapour and the cold. The traveller felt the genial warmth, and as the sun shone brighter and brighter, he sat down, overcome with the heat, and cast his cloak upon the ground. Thus the sun was declared the conqueror, and it has ever been deemed that persuasion is better than force, and that the sunshine of a kind and gentle manner will sooner lay open a poor man's heart than all the threatenings and force of blustering authority. Once upon a time, the mice, being sadly distressed by the persecution of the cat, resolved to call a meeting to decide upon the best means of getting rid of this continual annoyance. Many plans were discussed and rejected. At last a young mouse got up and proposed that a bell should be hung around the cat's neck, that they might for the future always have notice of her coming and so be able to escape. This proposition was hailed with the greatest applause, and was agreed to at once unanimously. Upon which an old mouse, who had sat silent all the while, got up and said that he considered the contrivance most ingenious, and that it would no doubt be quite successful, but he had only one short question to put, namely, which of them it was who would bell the cat. It is one thing to propose, another to execute. It happened in days of old that a lion fell in love with a woodman's daughter and had the folly to ask her of her father in marriage. The woodman was not much pleased with the offer, and declined the honour of so dangerous an alliance. But upon the lion threatening him with his royal displeasure, the poor man, seeing that so formidable a creature was not to be denied, hit at length upon this expedient. "I feel greatly flattered," said he, "with your proposal. But, noble sir, what great teeth you've got, and what great claws you have got! Where is the damsel who would not be frightened at such weapons as these? You must have your teeth drawn and your claws pared before you can be a suitable bridegroom for my daughter." The lion straightway submitted, for what will not a body do for love, and then called upon the father to accept him as a son-in-law. But the woodman, no longer afraid of the tamed and disarmed bully, seized a stout cudgel and drove the unreasonable suitor from his door. A hound, having put up a hare from a bush, chased her for some distance, but the hare had the best of it and got off. A goatherd who was coming by jeered at the hound, saying that puss was the better runner of the two. "You forget," replied the hound, "that it is one thing to be running for your dinner, and another for your life." A doe that had but one eye used to graze near the sea, and that she might be the more secure from attack, kept her eye upon the land against the approach of the hunters, and her blind side towards the sea, where she feared no danger. But some sailors, rowing by in a boat and seeing her, aimed at her from the water and shot her. when at her last gasp she sighed to herself, "Ill-fated creature that I am! I was safe on the land side whence I expected to be attacked, but find an enemy in the sea to which I most look for protection." Our troubles often come from the quarter whence we least expect them. As a countryman was carelessly driving his wagon along a miry lane, his wheels stuck so deep in the clay that the horses came to a standstill. Upon this, the man, without making the least effort of his own, began to call upon Hercules to come and help him out of his trouble. But Hercules bade him lay his shoulder to the wheel, assuring him that heaven only aided those who endeavoured to help themselves. It is in vain to expect our prayers to be heard, if we do not strive as well as pray. There was a great stir made amongst all the beasts which could boast of the largest family. So they came to the Lioness. "And how many," said they, "do you have at a birth?" "One," said she grimly, "but that one is a lion. Quality comes before quantity." An angler who gained his livelihood by fishing, after a long day's toil, caught nothing but one little fish. "Spare me," said the little creature, "I beseech you. So small as I am, I shall make you but a sorry meal. I'm not come to my full size yet. Throw me back into the river for the present, and then, when I'm grown bigger and worth eating, you may come here and catch me again." "No, no," said the man, "I've got you now. But if you once get back into the water, your tune will be, 'Catch me if you can.' A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush." A farmer, being on the point of death, and wishing to show his sons the way to success in farming, called them to him and said, "My children, I am now departing from this life, and all that I have to leave you will find in the vineyard." The sons, supposing that he referred to some hidden treasure, as soon as the old man was dead, set to work with their spades and ploughs and every implement that was at hand, and turned up the soil over and over again. They found indeed no treasure, but the vines, strengthened and improved by this thorough tillage, yielded a finer vintage than they had ever yielded before, and more than repaid the young husbandmen for all their trouble. So truly is industry in itself a treasure. A country maid was walking along with a can of milk upon her head, when she fell into the following train of reflections. The money for which I shall sell this milk will enable me to increase my stock of eggs to 300. These eggs, allowing for what may prove addle and what may be destroyed by vermin, will produce at least 250 chickens. The chickens will be fit to carry to market just at the time when poultry is always dear, so that by the new year I cannot fail of having money enough to purchase a new gown. Green? Let me consider. Yes, green becomes my complexion best, and green it shall be. In this dress I will go to the fair, where all the young fellows will strive to have me for a partner. But no, I shall refuse every one of them, and with a disdainful toss turn from them. Transported with this idea, she could not forbear acting with her head the thought that thus passed in her mind, when down came the can of milk, and all her imaginary happiness vanished in a moment. A schoolboy stole a horn-book from one of his schoolfellows and brought it home to his mother. Instead of chastising him, she rather encouraged him in the deed. In course of time, the boy, now grown into a man, began to steal things of greater value, till at length, being caught in the very act, he was bound and led to execution. Perceiving his mother following among the crowd, wailing and beating her breast, he begged the officers to be allowed to speak one word in her ear. When she quickly drew near and applied her ear to her son's mouth, he seized the lobe of it tightly between his teeth and bit it off. Upon this she cried out lustily, and the crowd joined her in upbraiding the unnatural son, as if his former evil ways had not been enough, but that his last act must be a deed of impiety against his mother. But he replied, "It is she who is the cause of my ruin. For if, when I stole my schoolfellow's horn-book and brought it to her, she had given me a sound flogging, I should never have so grown in wickedness as to come to this untimely end. Nip evil in the bud, spare the rod, and spoil the child." A certain man had the good fortune to possess a goose that laid him a golden egg every day. But dissatisfied with so slow an income, and thinking to seize the whole treasure at once, he killed the goose, and cutting her open found her just what any other goose would be. Much wants more and loses all. An old man that had travelled a long way with a huge bundle of sticks found himself so weary that he cast it down and called upon Death to deliver him from his most miserable existence. Death came straightway at his call and asked him what he wanted. "Pray, good sir," says he, "do me but the favour to help me up with my burden again." It is one thing to call for death, and another to see him coming. A boy was bathing in a river, and getting out of his depth was on the point of sinking, when he saw a wayfarer coming by, to whom he called out for help with all his might and main. The man began to read the boy a lecture for his foolhardiness, but the urchin cried out, "Oh, save me now, sir, and read me the lecture afterwards." A cat, having fallen in love with a young man, besought Venus to change her into a girl in the hope of gaining his affections. The goddess, taking compassion on her weakness, metamorphosed her into a fair damsel, and the young man, enamoured of her beauty, led her home as his bride. As they were sitting in their chamber, Venus, wishing to know whether in changing her form she had also changed her nature, set down a mouse before her. The girl, forgetful of her new condition, started from her seat and pounced upon the mouse as if she would have eaten it on the spot, whereupon the goddess, provoked at her frivolity, straightway turned her into a cat again. What is bred in the bone will never out of the flesh. A troop of boys were playing at the edge of a pond, when, perceiving a number of frogs in the water, they began to pelt at them with stones. They'd already killed many of the poor creatures, when one, more hardy than the rest, putting his head above the water, cried out to them, "Stop your cruel sport, my lads. Consider, what is play to you is death to us." A miller and his son were driving their ass to a neighbouring fair to sell him. They had not gone far when they met with a troop of girls returning from the town, laughing and talking. "Look there," cried one of them, "did you ever see such fools, to be trudging along the road on foot when they might be riding?" The old man, hearing this, quietly bade his son get on the ass and walked along merrily by the side of him. Presently they came up to a group of old men in earnest debate. "There," said one of them, "it proves what I was a-saying. What respect is shown to old age in these days? Do you see that idle young rogue riding while his old father has to walk? Get down, you scapegrace, and let the old man rest his weary limbs." Upon this the father made his son dismount and got up himself. In this manner they had not proceeded far when they met a company of women and children. "Why, you lazy old fellow," cried several tongues at once, "how can you ride upon the beast when that poor little lad there can hardly keep pace by the side of you?" The good-natured miller stood corrected, and immediately took up his son behind him. They had now almost reached the town. "Pray, honest friend," said a townsman, "is that ass your own?" "Yes," said the old man. "Oh, one wouldn't have thought so," said the other, "by the way you load him. Why, you two fellows are better able to carry the poor beast than he you." "Anything to please you," said the old man, "we can but try." So, alighting with his son, they tied the ass's legs together, and by the help of a pole endeavoured to carry him on their shoulders over a bridge that led to the town. This was so entertaining a sight that the people ran out in crowds to laugh at it, till the ass, not liking the noise nor his situation, kicked asunder the cords that bound him, and tumbling off the pole fell into the river. Upon this the old man, vexed and ashamed, made the best of his way home, convinced that by endeavouring to please everybody he had pleased nobody, and lost his ass into the bargain.